Greetings, dear friends. Today we are listening to an old story that has been passed through generations, The Witch and Her Violin. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. You're listening to Arcadia's Tales. It all started in the early 1800s. I was 10 years old, living in a small town in Mexico with my parents. The town had about 200 folks. Among them was a woman who we knew as Donna Romero. She was an elderly woman with completely gray hair, which always looked sloppy. She had a prominent nose and was very thin in build. With her strange attitude and mysterious personality, it earned her the nickname of the Witch. Most people didn't know much about her, but some said she had been one of the first people to inhabit the town. She was very reserved and never really spoke to anyone. Parents from the town did not let their children play near her house, and young teens did not dare to go nearby, not even during the day. Her creepy old house was far from the town center. No one thought well of her. Many things were said in connection with her. Rumors were that she had a pact with the devil, that she was over 100 years old, that she wasn't human. In reality, it was all just typical gossip of the town. The only thing we knew for sure was that she played the violin. Every night at 11 o'clock, the sound of the instrument was heard. It was always the same melancholic melody, a frightening, petrifying, spine-chilling melody. The sound gave everyone goosebumps. When the music began, people would go into their houses. It was some sort of habit, as if the melody warned us that it was time to go to bed. One night before we went to sleep, screams were heard from the outskirts of town. People came out of their houses to see what was happening. They were surprised to see that Donna Romero house was on fire. There was no doubt that those weren't her screams. Chilling and violent screams penetrated our ears. The people were terrified. No one decided to help her. They only limited themselves to watch from afar while the house was consumed by fire. No one came to the cries of help, no matter how heartbreaking they were. Her screams were lost in the sound of the burning wood. Those screams soon turned into sobs and then total silence. They did not know how the fire had started, but people speculated that it could have been a candle that had fallen on the ground. At that time, the town did not have electricity, so a candle made sense. The next day, the sheriff arrived in town. The sheriff found the charred remains of the poor woman. They had been completely consumed. You could hardly tell that those charred remains were once a human being. Donna Romero had no family, so the sheriff decided to bury her in the backyard of her own house. All of this just to save some money and paperwork. After all, no one would miss her or claim her remains. The police left town, closing the case and leaving it as an accidental fire. Some people felt very guilty for not having done anything. Guilty for not helping that poor woman. That same night, people were getting ready to sleep. The clock hit 11, and it was then that a collective chill ran through the entire town. Nobody could believe it, but that sound was unmistakable. It was the witch's violin. It was the same melody that always played at that same exact time. People panicked and locked themselves in their houses. My parents tried to cover my ears with their hands until the melody ended, but no matter what they did, I could still hear the melody play. It was cold and cruel. It always lasted around 4 minutes, and this time was no exception. No one understood what or how it was happening, but we knew it was the witch who had returned from the dead. Every night was the same. At 11 o'clock, the violin would be played. But one cold and dark night, the violin was not heard. We thought it was finally over. But we couldn't be more wrong. It was until then that true terror flooded the town as their children began to disappear one by one. The first one was Pablo, the son of the town's blacksmith. He disappeared that same night. That night when the witch didn't play her violin. Everyone looked everywhere for him, but unfortunately he was never found. Months passed by, and the melody continued every night. Until again, one night there was no sound. This time it was a little girl, daughter of a family of butchers. She disappeared without leaving a trace. Scared parents stayed all night with their children to take care of them. But eventually they would fall asleep, and then they would wake up to their child missing. By the 1820s, there were no children left in the town except for one, which was me. At that time, I was 20 years old, and although I was practically no longer a child, I was the youngest kid in town. And when the town was left without children, it was the adults who began to disappear. The town couldn't take it anymore. They knew who was responsible. They knew the witch was behind it. Even though there were only half of the town's population left, the town reunited. The town was furious, tired, and exhausted. They all decided to go together to the witch's house. The plan was to exhume her remains and take them to another site, far from town. The night settled and they all headed towards the hill where her remains were. I watched everyone from a distance since my parents did not let me go. Before they could get close enough, everyone was paralyzed with fear. The witch began to play the violin. At first it was just the violin melody, but everyone saw something else. There was something coming out of the ground. It was a specter, a truly horrible specter. Immediately, they knew it was the witch. It was practically a charred skeleton with some pieces of skin still attached. Her burnt black dress and locks of long white hair floated on her skull. She carried an old and burned violin. It was probably what made it sound so hideous. The witch crawled out of the dirt. She got up and started floating. She began playing the violin. People began to throw stones at her. The witch seemed to not mind. The stones passed right through her as she kept playing the violin. It was until people started yelling and screaming at her. She stopped and looked at them with her diabolic black eyes. The townspeople scream, beg and cry for mercy. They asked and demanded for their children and missing family members. In the middle of all the screams and cries, the witch finally moved and opened her mouth. She let out the most terrifying and horrifying scream I have ever heard. My body froze, chills ran through my skin, and my legs got weak. She spoke, "I am not a witch and I have never been one. All of this is your fault. You did this to me. You saw how my house burned. You heard my screams, and even then, nobody came to help. I was just a defenseless old woman. I lived alone and far away because people reject me, not because I wanted to. Everyone judged me for my appearance. I suffered rejection from all of you. Even after my death, you didn't have respect for me. Yeah, let them bury me like an animal. But now it's different. I can finally be what you always wanted me to be. A witch. I will get my revenge. I will eat every single one of your children. And after I'm done, you will be next. I will make you pay. No one will be able to leave this town, especially the one responsible for my death." She finished speaking and she elevated. "Do you want your children back?" She asked with an evil smile across her old, dry face. The witch opened her mouth and threw up bones, blood and pieces of flesh. She covered the townspeople with the remains of their children. Having done this, the specter just vanished and everyone ran away screaming hysterically. This guilt feeling was killing me. I couldn't hide it. Not anymore. I went to my mother and told her the truth. I told her that I was the one responsible for everything. The rumors got to our heads. Rumors that Donna Romero was an evil witch, a cold-hearted killer, a monster. We were frightened of her. Me and Pablo decided to go and put an end to it. Pablo made sure that she was inside the house, and when he gave me the signal, I set fire to the house. Once we heard her screams, we ran back. We were scared. We thought we were helping the town. Little did we know we had created a monster. My mother did not know what to say to me. I told my mom that I should tell the town. Before I could say another word, she stopped me. "They will kill you. They'll take you to her and sacrifice you. This secret stays in this house," she said. The next day, a body was found. It was a single man. His body was found in the center of town. After his, it was common to find bodies throughout town. Bodies were always in the same position, completely open from the ribs, mutilated arms and legs, something truly horrible. People could not sleep, and eventually the whole town became a madhouse. People were losing their sanity. Corpses were frequently found, both of those who disappeared as well as those who desperately tried to escape from the town. We barely survived with what was grown and with the little water that the river carried. Everything had become a living hell. Years passed, and the witch kept playing her violin, always at the same exact time. It's horrible, but it was more terrifying when she didn't play it. We all knew that it meant death. That's how I lost my brothers, my neighbors, my father, and my mother. I didn't understand why she didn't come for me. I know very well that she knows that I am responsible for everything. I believe she's leaving me for last, maybe to make my torment longer. The town became emptier with time until only I was left. I am more than 80 years old, and I wish death upon me more than anything. I have lost everything I had. I have nothing to live for. I guess that's what I deserve for having done what I did. Murder an innocent woman, judging her blindly, condemning her to eternal suffering. I know that I deserve this and more. However, even though I want to die, I'm afraid of what she can do to me. I know she left me for the end. I know the worst of punishments is being saved for me. I know the melody of that violin by heart, and after so many years of listening to it, I can't get it out of my mind. I've lived way longer than what I wanted. I live alone in a house that is almost falling apart. I spend my days and nights sitting in a rocking chair with a cup of coffee in one hand and my shotgun in the other. Even though I know it won't do me much good, I leave this letter so that someone knows my story. I don't wish to be forgotten. I know that today I will finally face my destiny. I know the day has finally come because it's 11 o'clock, and today I didn't hear that scary and chilly melody of her violin. Hope you enjoy this classic old story. Stay spooky. Until the next one.